Good afternoon. My name's Andy Ebbs. I'm a solution consultant at OpenText, and today we're going to talk about migrating a Windows machine from Azure to a target environment, which will be Google Cloud. There's a quick summary slide on the screen here. I'm not going to go into any of this, but I'll just leave it up for a second in case you want to get any details off here. But the source machine will be a Azure virtual machine running Windows 2019, and we're going to replicate to a target machine into Google Cloud, which will be Windows 2019 as well. I'll show you quickly those environments. So my source environment is Azure, so you can see it's Azure Cloud, and I've got a machine in a UK South, and it's got two processors, 8 gig of RAM, and it's got a disk which is just a default, which I think is about 120 gig, which is just the default for Azure. Then I've got a Google target machine, so I've created this target machine in Google Cloud. It's also running Windows 2019. I've called it GCP target there. I've provisioned it with various different standard stuff here. Added a 120 gig disk to it, and we should be able to see the size of the machine here as well. It's an M2 standard. But the size of the machine doesn't matter as long as it's going to be big enough to run the Windows operating system that we're going to fail over into. Next thing I'm going to do is go to the Carbonite console. So the Carbonite console is where we control all of this. It's actually running on my laptop, but it could be running on a virtual machine somewhere in the environment. Data is not going to pass through it. It's really just there to control things. It's just a Windows client application. I've got the source machine and the target machine, so Azure and Google Cloud there. I've added them into the console. I'm now going to select the machine, and I'm going to choose to migrate it. This is now giving me three different wizards. We're going to use the middle one, full server migration, but we do have wizards that can just move files and folders. And we have one where if the target was ESX, maybe ESX running on Google Cloud, or to a vCenter, or we could do to Hyper-V, including things like Azure Stack Hub and so on. But today we're just going to do full server migration. One thing I need to do on this one is Azure uses a swap drive, D, by default. I don't need to replicate that, and I've not created a D drive on my target machine, and my wizard will expect to see a D drive as well. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to exclude that drive. There's no data on it, it's just a swap file. Then choose Next, choose my target machine, the Google one. Gather a bit of information about those servers. We have all these different settings here. I'm not really going to change much here. I want it to keep the target machine's network configuration, because I know then I can connect into my Google target machine without any issue. If you want to fail over the IP address, you can do so, but you need to make sure that you've got the rest of the infrastructure in place to be able to connect to the machine after failover. There are options for networking settings and synchronization and which path to use for replication. But the only other setting I'm really going to change here is compression. So I'm going to set compression to medium. That will add a few additional CPU cycles, but it will really reduce down the amount of data that we're going to send over the network. I can also limit the amount of bandwidth using a schedule or a fixed amount of bandwidth, just so that we don't swap the network with replication traffic. But I'm just going to leave that today. I'm going to go next. We're going to validate, and that's going to create the job. So you can see it's checking all these settings with a validation just to make sure the settings I've given it are going to be usable. You can see the job's been created here. It started its process here of calculating how many files need to be moved across and how big they are. And you can see the data has already started to synchronize. So we're going to have to wait a few minutes for this to actually complete. I'm probably going to fast forward it. But just to reiterate what we're doing here, so we have a source machine running in Azure. That could be running SQL, Oracle, SharePoint, SAP, a bespoke application, a file server, a web server, whatever you're running on that, we really don't care, as long as it's running a supported Windows or Linux operating system. And then the target machine just needs to be configured as a plain Windows server with the same version of Windows, or if we're doing Linux machines, the same distribution, major and minor version. Well, actually, the same distribution and same major version. The minor is not that important. But in this case, Windows to Windows, so 2019, Windows 2019. The replication is going to copy the whole system state and everything else across. The other thing we can perhaps have a quick look at is the virtual machines themselves. So I've added them into a remote desktop application so we can have a quick look at them. So I have my Azure virtual machine. So you can see it's a live machine. There's its host name there. I'll just create a file on the desktop so we can see that it's a live server. So even though I'm migrating it currently at the moment, I can still use this server. So I'll just put a file on the desktop there. And then I've got my target machine. I've tried to keep the desktop slightly different. So my source is meant to be Azure Blue there. And then this is my target. I just use the default Windows OS install. As you can see, there's no file on the desktop. So although it's synchronizing, it's not actually synchronizing it to the same path here. What I need to do is maybe just refresh my view, reconnect. There we go. So this has gone squashed up. So this should just come up and allow me to see the desktop again. Common password. So as I said, this is my GCP target. It's using just a default vest, and you can see the host name is in here. So this is Win19 GCP target. There's nothing on the desktop because it's not replicating to the same path on the target. It's actually going to put the data into a temporary area because we can't overwrite this running operating system. But we can actually see the data as it's been copied across. And if we look on the C drive in staging, we can see here is the files directory. So this is where we're putting the files temporarily. Some of them are hidden by Windows by default. But if we look in users and Andy, and then if we look in desktop, you can see there's that file. So this is the file that was created on the source machine in Azure, and it's already been replicated across the target. Even though it's currently synchronizing, we prioritize new data. I can also go back to that source machine, and if I change that to Google, by the time I switch back to my target machine, that change will be seen and replicated across. So, you know, we're working between two different data centers, one in Azure, one in Google. There's obviously latency and stuff, but even so, it's still pretty instantaneous there. I'm also just working on a flat file there, but we're going to be doing the same thing with live open databases. Every time we see a transaction being written to disk, we're capturing that transaction and replicating it. So even if it's a log file or a database write, as soon as that change happens, we send it to the target machine as quickly as the bandwidth allows. I'm obviously just using a flat file to keep things simple here. So going back to the Carbonite replication console, we should be able to see how it's progressing. It's got about 19%. It's probably going to take it another 5 or 10 minutes just to synchronize the remaining 14 gig of data. But already you can see the compression is quite effective. It's sent 4 gig of data. After compression, just 1.9 was actually sent over the wire. So I'm going to probably speed up or pause. So I'll catch you again in a few minutes. Okay, so it's got to 99%, almost at 100. Just take a few seconds while it just finalizes the data to make sure it's in sync between them. As I've shown before, you can actually see these two machines. They're both live. In fact, Windows is even trying to update itself. I'm just going to say at another time. But we can see the source machine and then the target machine. They're both live servers. Going back to the Carbonite replication console, we're now in a position where we can do a failover. So I'm going to right-click on the job, and we're going to choose to failover or cut over. I'm going to cut over live data, and this is how long it will actually take to failover. So it should probably take about 5 to 10 minutes. It's basically moving the files from that staging folder I showed you earlier over the top of the plain Windows operating system on the Google Cloud machine. It's also merging the registry from the source machine and the registry of the target, dealing with all the hardware keys, so the Hyper-V virtual machine drivers from the Azure virtual machine, they're going to get discarded. And we're going to keep the driver references in the registry for the Google Cloud machine. We're really only applying the software layer. So you can see it's going up quite quickly at the moment, but it will pause a couple of times and then we'll get to 100%. What we can also probably see, if I go back to the view I was using to look at the RDP sessions, my source machine has now been shut down. So we're shutting down the source automatically as part of the migration. This makes sure that if there's anything in memory, it gets flushed to disk so we don't lose anything. But the target's still online, although if I try to do anything with it at the moment, most of the services will have been shut down on here, so we'd start getting error messages and warnings and things. you won't want to change anything because you won't want any corruption accidentally. So again, I'm going to go back to the Carbonite replication console. See it's about 20%. I'm just going to leave it again, come back to you in a couple of minutes once that's at 100%. And at that point, I'll try and catch it in time so you can see the target machine being rebooted, but then we'll be able to connect back into it and hopefully see a successful migration. Okay, so after 5-10 minutes, it's now switched to failing over, which is the final step here. We can probably see if we look at the remote desktop connections, in fact the target machine has also gone offline now. So both machines have shut down. The source isn't going to come back online again because we've set that to automatically shut down as part of the failover. It also means that anything in memory gets sent over to a target so we don't lose anything. So zero data loss during the migration. I'm just going to give it a few seconds and then I'll try and start this target machine up again. So I'm going to connect to the IP address I've got mapped to this target machine in GCP. So we'll try it again now. Might take it a few more seconds before it's able to boot into it. And I think I'm just going to try again. There we go. Password. So we're now logging into the desktop of the source machine from Azure that's now been transferred over to the target machine in Google Cloud. Hopefully we should see a blue desktop, like the Azure source machine had. We can also see the Google file there that I created on the desktop. There's a warning message about the paging file, so we need to move that to the C drive as well. I think it does it by default, and we just need to resize that if we wanted to. So it's just created a 8 gig one on my C drive. We can see the host name has failed over as well. So this is now W19 Azure source, so it's taking the host name across. It's also taking things like the security ID or the GUID from the source machine, so that it can be added straight into Active Directory. There will be all the applications that might be running on the source machine, all the data, all the patches and hotfixes and service packs. It's going to look just like the original source machine. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully that was quite straightforward. If you have any questions and you'd like a bit more information or you want something more specific, happy to do a presentation or demo on similar solutions, whether you want to go to Google to Azure or to Amazon or to one of the other more obscure clouds, or if you wanted to do physical to physical, they all use the same workflow. If you want to go physical to ESX or Hyper-V, we have another workflow. I'll upload a video of that shortly. Any questions though, you can always give me a call on email at OpenText, and hope to speak to you soon. Thank you.